The year 2025 was shaping up to be a milestone for the global automotive industry. But for Japanese giants like Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, it turned into a perfect storm of interconnected challenges. It all began in January, when the United States government announced 25% tariffs on imported vehicles not manufactured on American soil. The measure, seen as a direct blow to Asian automakers, caused Toyota's shares to plummet 16% in a single week. For a company that sold 2 million vehicles in the U.S. in 2024, more than Chevrolet, the impact was immediate. Dealerships from Houston to Detroit began recalculating prices, while executives in Tokyo scrambled to renegotiate supply chains that had taken decades to build. Meanwhile, on the production lines in Yokohama, Nissan was facing its own nightmare. February data revealed a 21% drop in U.S. production and a 35% drop in China. Workers in Canton, Mississippi, received notices of temporary layoffs. "We're witnessing the collapse of a business model that worked for 50 years, commented a J.D. Power analyst, as trucks loaded with unsold Sentras piled up in California lots. Honda, in turn, struggled to stay relevant. Its hybrid SUV sales fell 18% in the first quarter, outpaced by Chinese BYD electric models and Ford's diesel pickups. Pressure was mounting from multiple fronts. While American automakers accelerated the transition to electric vehicles with heavy subsidies from the Inflation Reduction Act, Japanese companies seemed stuck in the past. The Nissan Leaf, a pioneer in 2010, now accounted for just 2% of the brand's global sales. At the Tokyo Auto Show, executives unveiled hydrogen concepts that increasingly sounded like risky bets, while Tesla dominated 68% of the U.S. premium EV market. First quarter data showed that electric vehicle sales in Japan had dropped 23.8%, a cruel paradox for the country that invented the Prius. In the corridors of Japan's Ministry of Economy, rumors of a Nissan-Honda merger were gaining traction. "We'll survive together or die separately," an anonymous CEO reportedly told the Nikkei. Meanwhile, in Tochigi, workers at an internal combustion engine factory watched as production lines, once the pride of the industry in the 1990s, were dismantled. The restructuring would cost 15,000 direct jobs, according to estimates from the JAM union. The used car market, traditionally a Japanese stronghold, was also collapsing. American collectors who paid fortunes for Skyline GTRs under the 25-year rule now faced an extra 25% fee, a double blow for enthusiasts and exporters. In Long Beach, the largest used car import port in the U.S., containers filled with MX-5s and Supras remained boxed up, waiting for customs solutions that never came. The crisis exposed deep structural cracks. While Volkswagen invested $30 billion in solid-state batteries, Toyota was still allocating 60% of its R&D to hybrid engines. "We're stuck in a cycle of technological dependence," admitted a senior engineer on condition of anonymity. In China, the world's second-largest economy, Japanese market share dropped to 15%, overtaken by Shenzhen EVs offering 500 miles of range for the price of a Corolla. Even the yen, traditionally an ally for exports, became an adversary. The currency's devaluation to Y160 per dollar should have boosted sales, but with American tariffs, the net effect was negative. In Nagoya, exporters calculated that each Camry shipped to Los Angeles now cost $4,500 more, a difference dealerships refused to absorb. The result? Waiting lists for German and Korean cars in showrooms from Miami to Seattle. Meanwhile, back in Japan, the government tried to revive the domestic market. Subsidies of $850,000 for EV purchases sounded generous, but ran into reality. Only 1.7% of the country's charging points were compatible with international standards. On the streets of Osaka, taxi drivers still preferred hybrids. "There's nowhere to charge during a shift," one driver complained. Meanwhile, Hyundai opened its 5th gigafactory in the U.S., taking advantage of incentives that Japanese companies, stuck with outdated local production, couldn't access. The crisis became human in the stories of workers like Akira Sato, 54, who after 3 decades at Nissan, saw his job in Optima replaced by EV assembly robots. "I trained my whole life to build V6 engines," he told NHK. "Now they tell me they're obsolete." Young engineers, on the other hand, were migrating to mobility startups in Tokyo, where crypto salaries and flexible hours contrasted with traditional corporate culture. The collapse even reached political backrooms. In Washington, Japanese lobbyists pushed for tariff exemptions, while the EU threatened retaliation if European automakers were harmed. At COP30, activists criticized the sector's technological myopia, a cruel irony for the country of the Kyoto Protocol. Meanwhile, in Shanghai, BYD executives laughed as their new Seal sedan outsold both Tesla's Model 3 and Honda's Accord in the same quarter. By March, the storm gained new elements. Rivian announced a partnership with Amazon for 100,000 electric vans, while Toyota canceled the U.S. launch of the BZ4X after a recall for loose wheels. On the Tokyo Stock Exchange, the Nikkei 225 index lost 10% in 3 months, dragged down by automakers. Goldman Sachs analysts predicted that without radical changes, Japanese global market share would drop to 15% by 2030, from 30% in 2020. At the eye of the hurricane, American consumers like Sarah Johnson, 34, from Austin, embodied the change. "I wanted a RAV4 hybrid, but with the tariffs, it's cheaper to lease a Model Y for 3 years," she said, charging her electric SUV at a supercharger. Her case was not unique. Edmunds surveys showed that 43% of buyers postponed their purchase of Japanese cars in 2025, citing tariff uncertainties and a preference for green technology. While the global industry reinvented itself at 5G speed, Japanese automakers seemed stuck in a time loop. Their iconic K cars, perfect for Kyoto's streets, made little sense in Los Angeles. Their lean production systems, once copied worldwide, proved slow for the battery revolution. And their culture of consensus, once a strength, now prevented bold decisions. As the CEO of a mobility startup in Osaka summed up, "They won the 20th century, but forgot to buy a ticket for the 21st. The outcome of this crisis is still being written." While Honda tests modular factories in Mexico and Nissan negotiates joint ventures with BYD, the legacy of Akio Toyoda, the last Toyota president with family ties, is questioned at turbulent shareholder meetings. For millions of workers, retirees, and sports car fans, 2025 will be remembered as the year the sun set on an automotive empire. Only time will tell if it's a definitive twilight or the prelude to a radical reinvention.